Welcome on the second video on W.B.Yeats. In the previous video, I explained you a brief introduction of W.B.Yeats. In this video, I am going to explain a poem, A Prayer for My Daughter, written by W.B.Yeats, who is an Irish poet. In this video, I'll give you a little introduction of the poem and I will explain and analyze few stanzas for you. I am Dr. Vinita Bhadoria, Associate Professor of English in Government College, Behror. This video is useful for final year students of BA. A Prayer for My Daughter is a poem written by William Butler Yeats, better known W.B. Yeats. This poem was written in 1919 and published first time in 1921 as part of Yeats' collection Michael Robertis and the Dancers. A Prayer for My Daughter is describing his daughter Annie. His daughter with Georgie Hedales, whom Yeats married after his last marriage proposal to Madgon was rejected in 1916. Yeats wrote the poem while staying in a tower at Thur Ballylee during the Anglo-Irish War, 2 days after Annie's birth on February 26, 1919. A Prayer for My Daughter is a reflection of the poet's love for his daughter. It is also about surviving the turmoil of the contemporary world where passions have been separated from reason. The setting of the poem is unspecified. The speaker is the poet himself talking to his daughter. The tone is gloomy, precocious, and frightening, as well as didactic. The poem portrays the theme of love and anxiety of a father who has been blessed with a daughter. It also presents the poet's hopes for his daughter and his expectation of her becoming a very beautiful woman, blessed with the attributes of a virtuous soul. As I explained you before, it is about surviving the turmoil of the contemporary world, where passions have been separated from reason. The setting of the poem is unspecified. The speaker is the poet. The speaker is the poet, and tone is melancholious. The poem is written in a lyric form containing 10 stanzas with 8 lines in each stanza. The poem follows a regular rhyme scheme, which is AA, BB, CD, DC. The meter of this poem alternates between iambic pentameter and trochaic pentameter, as in the lines I have walked and prayed for this young child an hour, or and heard the sea wind scream upon the tower. These are few examples. The meter of this poem alternates between iambic pentameter and trochaic pentameter, as in I have walked and prayed for this young child an hour, and heard the sea wind scream upon the tower. So there is a shuffling. The poem is rich in literary devices such as symbolism, personification, paradox, sibilance, assonance, alliteration, and onomatopoeia. The line murderous innocence of the sea is an example of paradox. Sibilance is found in the word sea wind scream, while scream is also an example of an onomatopoeia. The use of personification can be noted in the line future years. That the future years had come dancing to a frenzied drum, which implied the transience of life. The poet uses symbols such as sea vent and flooded stream, which denotes turbulent forces at work. Alliteration is present in the phrase be granted beauty. We can say a prayer for my daughter is demonstrating the poet's concern and anxiety over the future well being and prospects of his daughter Annie. Analysis and explanation of the poem A Prayer for My Daughter. Once more the storm is howling, and half hid under this cradle hood and coverlet, my child sleeps on. There is no obstacle but Gregory's Wood and one bare hill, whereby the haystack and roof leveling wind, bred on the Atlantic, can be stayed. And for an hour I have walked and prayed because of the great gloom that is in my mind. The poem opens with the image of the child sleeping in a cradle, half hidden by its hood, and the child sleep innocently amidst the howling storm outside, but Yeats couldn't settle down due to the storm inside. Inside, inside the poet, in the heart of the poet. The howling storm symbolizes destruction mentioned by the poet in his second coming. The windbread in Atlantic Ocean has no obstacles except the estate of the Lady Gregory, referring to the poet's patroness and a bare hill. The direct impact of the wind, meaning to the force of the outside world, especially on his daughter, worries the poet. Because of it, this great gloom, melancholy, sadness, he walked and prayed for his daughter to be protected from the physical storm outside and the political storm brewing across Ireland. The poet is in a gloomy mood, partly through his grave concern at the turbulence in the society and partly through anxiety for the future of her daughter. Annie Butler Yeats is the name of her daughter. He finds that this world in which she is born is growing harsher and harsher. The poet's daughter sleeps quietly in her cradle, half hidden under the cradle hood and the coverlet. Outside, the storm is howling again and again. There are no barriers except Lady Gregory's Wood and hills, which can check the speed of the stormy wind coming from the Atlantic and pulling down haystacks and house roofs. Winds are so fierce. Inside the poet's mind, there also blows a storm of great melancholy, sadness. The poet has walked and prayed for his infant daughter for about an hour. I have walked and prayed for this young child an hour, and heard the sea wind scream upon the tower, and under the arches of the bridge, and scream in the elms above the flooded stream. Imagining in excited reverie is daydreaming, that the future years had come, dancing to a frenzied drum out of the murderous innocence of the sea. In this stanza, poet worries about the future of her daughter. He hears the sea screaming upon the tower, under the bridge and elms above the flooded stream. The onomatopoeia word scream and the flooded stream symbolize the poet's overwhelming anxiety for his daughter. It also refers to the great flood in the Bible. Due to his haunting fear, he imagines the future coming out of the sea and dances to the frenzied drum, referring to war and bloodshed. In the last line, the poet employs paradox, that is, murderer's innocence, to contrast the world and his daughter. That means world is so cruel and his daughter is so innocent, which also recalls the images of blood dimmed tide in the second coming. As the poet has walked and prayed for his infant daughter for about an hour, he has heard the Atlantic wind howling outside his house in the Thur Balali Tower, under the arches of the stream bridge, and also among the elms upon the hillside to the flooded stream. The storm has excited in him fear that the destructive future years have arrived at last, and they have come dancing to a maddening drumbeat, loud drumbeat, as if out of the dangerous calm of the Atlantic. So, like an affectionate father, he prays for his daughter's safety in a world which is growing more and more unsafe and anarchy. Poet make use of so many literary devices in this stanza. Uh, Imagining in excited reverie that the future years had come, dancing to a frenzied drum out of the murderous innocence of the sea. It is the fanciful visionary nature of the poet that can we notice. The storm beating upon the scene is compared to a wild dance of the future years, destructive years, destructive future years. Murderous innocence is an example of oxymoron, the just opposition of incompatible or contradictory words. The sea is often murderous and destructive, but innocent because the destruction is not intentional. One more thing is there. The violence of nature seems symbolic of a large violence. The murderous innocence of the sea is highly symbolic line. The image recalls the mere anarchy and the blood dimmed tide of the second coming. The poet also has in mind the World War, the Irish Civil War, and the inhumanity of the modern 20th century world. In such a setting, how can this birth, the child in this cradle, escape the nightmare violence to be born in Bethlehem when the rough beast of the second coming lies rocking where Christ had once been cradled? May she be granted beauty and yet not beauty to make a stranger's eye distraught, or hers before a looking glass, for such being made beautiful overmuch. Consider beauty a sufficient end, lose natural kindness and maybe the heart revealing intimacy that chooses right and never find a friend. In this stanza, poet prays to God to save his daughter from many an evil of the present civilization. He foresees the end of the present civilization, which is scientific, democratic, fact accumulating, heterogeneous civilization. In this civilization, there is anarchy and lawlessness. Therefore, the poet is gloomy and anxious to protect his child from the wrath of the coming cruel tides. Poet prays to solicit for his infant child of a life of beauty. He prays that his daughter should be gifted with beauty, but he does not want that this beauty should make his daughter proud and cruel. Generally, it happens that exceptionally beautiful women begins to regard beauty as a complete end in itself. They forget that beauty be conducive to the happiness of life. Beautiful, proud women forget their natural feminine qualities such as kindness and shyness. They fail to respond to the advances of even their sincere lovers. Therefore, they unlimitedly, ultimately fail to find a suitable life partner. So, Yeats wants that his beautiful daughter should never be proud of her beauty. Yeats cites examples to explain his point. He gives example from history and legend of beautiful women who suffered greatly. In other words, he prays for his daughter to be gifted with beauty. At the same time, he doesn't want her beauty to distort or makes her dependent on her beauty for everything. Further, he doesn't want her to become proud or vain that she spends all day staring at the mirror and fails to have natural companionship. The poet implies too much beauty to be a dangerous one that he wants her to be beautiful enough to secure a husband. I have explained you three stanzas of this poem and a brief introduction of the poem, its style, its language, the use of literary device. Still, seven stanzas are remaining to explain and analyze. Those will be explained in next video. Thank you very much.